It's about the restoration of our republic. We want to educate, encourage, enable the power. We stand for integrity, honesty, self-reliance, self-defense, and most importantly, no compromise on our foundational principles. This is America's Voice Now.
Find America's Voice Now on Facebook and at americasvoicenow.org. Here's Michael Evans.
Good morning, America. You're listening to America's Voice right here, right now. I'm going to cover a broad group of topics this morning. I'm glad that you joined us. If you're catching us on Patriot FB this morning, outstanding. If you are catching us live on our website, glad to see you out there. Well, I see a ton of people out on our site this morning, and I'm happy to have you. I see Sebastian, I think that's Florida, and let's see, Brandon Township and Fort Wayne, Lincoln, Nebraska, I think, Mission Viejo, Del Rio, Texas, Huntington, Texas, Baton Rouge, let's see, Chicago, Maine, somebody in Maine over here. Thanks very much for joining us. I'm glad to have you on board. If you are catching us on Patriot FB, that's outstanding. If you are listening to us on Big Country 99, the Rooster Radio Network, welcome. Thanks for listening. We're going to cover 4 different topics this morning, as we normally do. I try to break the program into 4 separate topics so that we have enough time to go over each one. Our first will be how to identify a statist in your midst. For those of you that aren't familiar with the term statist, it is typically someone who is got the idea that big government is the solution to all their problems or all your problems, and quite frankly, they're willing to put a gun to your head to make sure that you agree. I think that would be the textbook example. Our second topic will be the crisis in the Ukraine, and I got to tell you, I don't normally try to delve on too deeply into foreign crises and foreign issues, and I'll tell you why. We got our own problems here in the United States. And to be honest with you, the second portion of that title, Crisis in the Ukraine, is that U.S. involvement is a mistake. But I'm also here to tell you that the reason we're involved is because our nation and the IMF and the statists in charge of our nation and the Eurozone and NATO are salivating at the idea of what they can rape from the Ukraine, while Russia is anxious not to lose face and to retain a portion of its what used to be its orbital nations. And in addition to that, they've got a major economic issue going on, which is the transport of natural gas across the Ukraine. And so this is a regional conflict that is anything but isolated, and you ought to know about it. The strategic value of this region is well known and it is clear. And yet there are still a lot of other complications, including ethnic, religious, nationalistic, and a host of others. Now, for the record, in case you haven't seen the headlines this morning, there's some unknown individuals that have, one, seized the capital of Crimea, which is a small peninsula, almost an island down at the bottom in the Black Sea. And then in addition to that, they've seized the airport, and these people are allegedly, nobody really knows yet because they're not identifying themselves, but they're allegedly Russian troops. And so I got to tell you, folks, that is not a good sign, because we have stuck our proverbial private parts into the ringer in this instance. And I have to tell you, I don't think Russia's going to play. I think I saw people, making Putin out to be this great, freedom-loving guy back when they were throwing bombs at Obama over the Syria issue. And I was appalled, because the truth is, Putin is a thug. He's a KGB operative. He is a monster of an individual as a human being, and he is a monster of a totalitarian and a statist. So let's run with that theme for this morning. And I got to tell you, he is hardcore, unlike our own president, who's too busy limp-wristing and milk-toasting his way through his 8 years. So we'll talk a little bit about that. Our third topic, NSA and the GCHQ. Now, if you're not familiar with the GCHQ, that is the British equivalent of the NSA here in the United States. And they were, another Snowden revelation. They are exposing the fact that they were spying on millions of Yahoo webcams. Now, Yahoo sponsors a program where you can, use your webcam. Well, millions of them over a period, an extended period that ran all the way from 2008 and is still ongoing for all we know. Yahoo is vehemently denying it. It's interesting, though. They captured a ton of pornography and kept it. For what? Why? Well, there's only two reasons. One, either everybody in the NSA and the GCHQ is rapidly flagellating themselves, or they're using that to gain leverage against the individuals in the video. Or maybe both. I mean, I don't know. But you got to question, is it government's job to be worried about your sexual exploits on a webcam on Yahoo? I don't care whether you agree or disagree with the whole concept of that. My point is, where is government going with that? And why is it any of their business? And why would they keep it? Unless they intended to use it for harm. Because there's no purpose served that's positive. All right. Our final topic. This issue of the liberal set who is desperately now trying to cage the beast that they released with the idea that you can have unlimited money in these super PACs is relatively frightening. They opened this door, this Pandora's box, and they've had, for all intents and purposes, exclusive rights to it for a long, long time. Only because the Republicans, or the Pubicans, as I think I'm going to begin to call them, were too stupid to take advantage of it. But frankly, it should have never existed at all, period, under anybody's radar. But now that the Pubicans have figured out how to use it, the libs are having kittens, and they're trying to hide the monster that they've released and unleashed on the United States of America. The truth is, super PACs and big money in elections are bad for America. We don't run the nation based on whether or not the NFL wants to lobby against Arizona on a potential fraudulently exposed gay rights legislation that had absolutely nothing to do with that. And yet, the NFL, a not-for-profit organization itself, I might add, went out there and threatened Arizona the other day and said, if you go ahead and sign this legislation, Governor, we're going to yank the Super Bowl from you, which would have cost the state probably billions of dollars. Forgive me, but I didn't know that one nonprofit like the NFL, who's clearly for-profit, was the prime motivator behind whether or not a piece of legislation passes or not. And the truth is that there were a ton of constitutional professors and experts that stepped up and said, forget all the rhetoric, Governor. This law is actually a good one. It has nothing to do with gay rights and all the rest of that. But it's a chimera. It's a red herring. They're using it as a false flag opportunity to bomb Arizona. Well, you got Harry Reid the other day coming out and calling Americans in the millions liars because the Koch brothers sponsored an ad of people that were basically shafted by Obamacare. And now they don't like the fact that the Republicans have figured out how to use their own weapon of mass destruction against them. What a shame. Where is any honor in our nation? Okay. I found a great article, and boy, it was like, you ever hold a hammer in your hand and you're putting together, you're constructing a building or something like that, and you just take a swing with the hammer and you hit that nail dead on, and you can just feel it. It runs right through the hammer, runs all the way down through the handle and right into your wrist, and you can feel it. You hit it just right. When you're out playing golf and you hit that ball and you hear that perfect little, and you hit that ball dead on and it's going to fly straight and true. So as I was reading this article this morning, I'm like, This is the title of this. It's on CNS News. CNS News, by the way. If you are not using CNS News, you're missing it. It's Charlie November Sierra News.com. How statists think, or don't, their top 20 traits. Lawrence Reed put this together. I got to tell you, I read through this thing and I'm like, bingo, 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 bing, 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 bing. It was like sitting there and hitting 20 balls perfectly in a row and just watching them go. It was perfect. So we're going to go over that because I want you to do two things. I want you to, one, recognize who statists are when you see them. But then I'd really kind of like you to sit down and think to yourself, okay, so what is it? And who are the people in my political world, if you will, and not political world, by the way? You can also look at this from the perspective of your church, your boss. You can look at this from the perspective of any civic organization that you're a member of, because it applies all the time. Interestingly enough, statists exist in more than just government. So anyhow, I want to go over this list with you, and I want you to do a couple of things while you're listening to it. Read the list, or go along with me on it, and then on your own, in your viewpoint, think to yourself, who is exposed by the sunshine of this critical thought? And that's essentially what it is, because this is suggesting to you that you can look at people's actions and tell a lot more about them than you can by their words. And if that doesn't fit politics, nothing does. So number one, and he leads up to the story by giving some examples here of, like the VA hospitals, right? Big government always says we can do everything better and better. Well, take a look at VA. Well, boy, if you've ever been to a VA hospital, you know what I'm talking about, right? And so, but he says, over the years, I've observed quite a few attributes of the statist thought process that are, to be polite, rather questionable. And here's a short list. It's 20 points long, but you're gonna each one of them is gonna sound like thwack. 1, they spend more time promoting dependency than they do encouraging self-reliance. Whack. 2, lies and deceptions. For example, if you like your plan, you can keep your plan. Don't rankle them, because they believe their ends justify almost any means. Folks, how many times have you heard me say that Machiavellian thought process is the basic foundation by which all of these statists and would-be tyrants, these little mini totalitarians and fascists that have invaded our political, the entire political genre, operate, right? They all live on that Machiavellian principle. What I'm doing is good, and it doesn't matter how I achieve it as long as I get there. And so they're corrupt from the jump. 2, they think intentions matter far more than actual results. Holy smoke. Let's say Obamacare, let's say EPA, in other words, they think that they have this grand scheme, and it's going to play out exactly like they plan. And nothing's going to change it. They failed to realize that if you ever want to hear God giggle, just tell him your plans. And it applies to them as well as you. I mean, they have these, delusions of grandeur that they're going to be able to implement this plan, and there's not going to be any unintended consequence, of course. I mean, who in their right mind, who lives in actual reality and not in some, self-imposed fantasy bubble where they're breathing unicorn flatulence for their daily breath, doesn't recognize that things happen that are outside of your control, or that you didn't anticipate would happen as a result of your actions. And those unintended consequences often will destroy everything that you had originally intended. 4, they lump people together into groups and assign them fictitious rights. Holy smoke. If that one doesn't kind of take the cake for you, nothing will. They've manufactured on Facebook the other day. They changed the sexual orientation from male and female. The ones that, mankind from caveman days to last week had determined were the two orientations you could be, with some very, very rare exceptions of a scientific nature. And they've made them now 56. You can be all these different things. You can be androgynous. You can be, asexual, prosexual, misexual, sexual, gender confused, alien of non-sexual orientation gender. I mean, it's just absurd. So my point is that they take these groups and they say, okay, so now that you claim that you're this, you suddenly have all these rights that, you can impose on the rest of us, right? And remember something, folks. The idea of a republic and a republican form of government is that government's real purpose is to, one, follow the rule of the majority, but only to the extent that it doesn't harm the rights of a minority. And the smallest minority is what? One. That would be you. So you have the right to swing your hands around all you like, but your rights stop when your hand comes in contact with my nose. Okay. 5. They learn little or nothing from history or economics. Boom shakalaka laka. I mean, look, you cannot find any organization or group other than the statist thinker who is not so imbued with their own brilliance and so impressed with themselves that they have refused over and over and over to learn the lessons of big government, which is that when you remove competition, when you interject government into enterprise and the economy, it always has unintended consequences because you're trying to change the natural flow of things. And anytime you change the natural flow, it's going to create confusion and chaos in the karmic universe. So when you have, and we're just talking economics now, when you have a government who says, well, we're going to pick the winners and losers because we know best, they fail to realize that you're essentially creating monopolies. And monopolies are never good for ultimately the rest of us. They may be good for you because they donate to your campaign. But from the perspective of the average guy on the street, the idea of a monopoly is not a good thing. It limits the options, it raises the pricing, and it stunts the growth of competitors who might provide a better product, faster, cheaper, or better quality for the same exact money. In a historical perspective, we can see that totalitarianism and big government have failed in every, and I do mean every, opportunity that they've had to begin to flourish. And yet, the statist never looks at the evidence. He always thinks, I can do better. I can beat the odds. It's like they gamble and play lottery with you. 6. They think emotions, slogans, and bumper stickers trump reason and logic. Boom. If that isn't the truth, I mean, well, let's just take the phrase, if you like your plan, you can keep your plan. It was a slogan. Every Democratic representative used it as they got this thing through, and they went to the people in their constituencies and they said, look, if you like your plan, you can keep it. If you like your doctor, you can keep it. Suddenly, the reality of the lie became apparent, and it became exposed that they all knew about the fact that it was a lie in the first place. And now you got Harry Reid coming out and saying, well, everybody who's telling a story that's other than our story is a liar. I have never heard of a politician who could insult so many people across so many political concepts, across so many political beliefs, in one fell swoop, and not be dragged out and literally hung from the nearest yardarm. Who ever heard of such a thing? This guy, I mean, look, folks, if this was anywhere else, any other parliament, any other government, they would have dragged a guy like him outside and they would have put him in stocks in the public square. You're going to sit there and tell me that 7 million Americans who lost their insurance and the 30 million who never had it in the first place, who are still not really getting it, are all liars because they've had a bad experience with your particular pet project? How absurd. And Harry, by the way, Dirty Harry is a known liar. Okay. 7, compassion is their favorite word, even as they put a gun to your head. Boy, oh boy, ain't that the truth. We're doing Obamacare for the benefit of the country. And I know you don't like it, but if you don't do it, we're going to take your money from you and we're going to cause you pain and suffering. And it's all because we know what's best. And it's our compassion for the downtrodden. When in reality, by the way, what it really all boils down to is, well, point number 1, they spend more time promoting dependency than they do encouraging self-reliance. 8, they respect property if it's theirs, but not if it's yours. Well, what's that old slogan that's out there that is actually one that makes sense? Socialism only works until you run out of other people's money. Bingo. We're going to run out of time here, man, and I'm only at number 10. Ah, it's killing me. We got 2 minutes left in this segment. They'd rather shut you up than engage you in serious debate. I'm going to tear through these really quick. Individuals are never among the minorities they say they support. Boy, that's true. The minority of one never gets any coverage, right? In fact, you know what? I'm going to hold this over and, well, I got the crisis in the Ukraine coming up next. Ugh. And there's a lot to talk about there, folks, because this thing is very fluid and the stuff is happening very fast and furious. No pun intended. When the first conservative or libertarian faculty member is hired at a university, they think it's a hostile takeover. 12, they think a welfare check is an entitlement, but a paycheck isn't. 13, when their policies flop, they assume no responsibility and demand more of the same. 14, they're always busy reforming you, even if their own lives are completely dysfunctional. 15, they claim to know the future, i.e. which industry to subsidize, while showing no evidence they even understand the past. 16, we're going to run out of time. I'm going to finish these 5 when we come back. You're listening to America's Voice Now. We're going to take a quick break. Commercials got to happen, and it's a hard clock, folks. I can't change that. We're going to take a quick break. When we return, we'll tackle this, and then we'll get into the issue going on over in the Ukraine. Very, very important stuff happening over there, folks, so don't miss this segment. You can find us at americasvoicenow.org. You can email me at mike@americasvoicenow.org. That's mike@americasvoicenow.org. If you'd like to share this segment or any other segment that we do, you can do it so on our listen line at 415-325-0725. We'll be back in just a moment.